Hello everybody and welcome to another video, another history of an old First Division team. This time I shall be looking at the history of Chelsea. Let's begin. In Chelsea were in the 1960s going through a bit of a tricky period when they had a manager who was sacked and he was replaced by player manager Tommy Docherty. Chelsea went on to win the League Cup, but after that, after the appointment of Tommy Docherty, success was hard to come by for Chelsea. So Tommy Docherty was sacked and he was replaced by Dave Sexton. That was in the late 1960s. And that's when Chelsea started to really mount a challenge for more trophies. They lost to Tottenham in the 1967 FA Cup final. They had late towards the end of the 60s, 69, 70 season, that's when they started having some great players. In goal, they had Peter Benetti. He was called the Cat because he was always making spectacular saves. They had Ron Harris, who was another hard man of football, which I've gone through in previous videos. And they had John Hollins. He was another quite physical player. They also had David Webb. And they had other talented players. They had Charlie Cook, uh, Peter Osgood, Ian Hutchinson, and Peter Houseman. That's when Chelsea started to threaten to win more trophies. And of course, they won the 1970 FA Cup, where the first match between Chelsea and Leeds ended in a draw, and it had to be replayed again at Old Trafford, where Chelsea won 2-1. And then the following year, the 70-71 season, they won the European Cup Winners' Cup, beating Real Madrid in Athens. That was after another replay. And in 1972, they were at Wembley again, but this time in the league, where they lost to Stoke City 2-1. Chelsea at the time then had the players to challenge for more, like I said, more trophies. They had the players there. I mean, they could have won the old First Division, but they didn't. And later in the 70s, that's when it all started to go wrong. Chelsea. They were relegated from the old First Division in 1974-75 season. And of course, their better players were then starting to retire. The likes of Peter Benetti, their goalkeeper, he was still playing well into the 75-76 season. He was still their goalkeeper. But I believe he retired after that. But their better players were then going to different clubs. Peter Osgood, he went to Southampton, of course. Southampton won the 1976 FA Cup, beating Man United. David Webb, he went to Queen's Park Rangers. So the team they had in the in the 60s into the 70s they were being moved on for different players. And of course, they ran into financial trouble. They had a new stand built. I believe that cost a fortune, and they were in trouble with that. And of course, they had we all remember the 80s, don't we? In British football, we had our football teams had the hooligan problem, particularly Chelsea. They had a lot of trouble, and well, they was always causing trouble wherever they went. But like I've said, Chelsea were another team, an old First Division team that should have won more trophies, which they didn't. They didn't appear in the 70s and into the 80s, appear into in any more cup finals until the 90s and the 2000s, where they had, and of course when Jose Mourinho was coach, he won the Premier League with them. They won the Premier League a couple of times, and the Champions League, the old European Cup, they won that. But yes, back then in the 70s, that's when Chelsea had some great players. I remember when Albion used to play Chelsea, because I'm an Albion supporter, by the way. I remember seeing when Albion used to play Chelsea. I think it was the 68, 69 season when they beat us 3-1 at home, and then we played them in the cup in 1969. We beat them at Stamford Bridge. We had some interesting matches with Chelsea back then in the start of the 70s. We played them one Easter Monday in 1970. We beat them 3-1, and that day we had all sorts of weather. We had snow, rain, sunshine, you name it, we had it that day. But yes, we had some interesting matches with Chelsea. I did Albion. But like I've said, Chelsea should have won more trophies in that decade, in the 70s. They should have won more trophies. They were a team that, back then, when Dave Sexton was their manager, they had the potential to win more trophies, but they never did. They had a team that could have won the old First Division, which they never did. But they could have won it with the players they got there. But they was always seemed to be overshadowed by Liverpool winning the old First Division, and other teams winning it as well. They was always seemed to be overshadowed by certain teams. They never seemed to take that final step of winning a major trophy. Well, anyway, that's the end of my history of Chelsea FC, and I'll see you all again in another video.